while you were in jail, surrounded by violence, drugs, right? A whole bunch of people that committed different crimes, right? But you were innocent.
Yes, sir.
What gave you hope and conviction to say this chapter isn't the end of my story?
It was for me, I had to prove my innocence, man, by any means necessary, because again, my mother raised us all to be decent, human beings, because she didn't want us to be anything different. So when I was literally, like you said, as a teenager, I was thrown, a lot of stuff was thrown at me, I wanted to, I couldn't wait to when I was legally able to get a job. Because I wanted to help my mom. I wanted to help out at home, and I wanted a little bit more food than what we was getting. So the only way I can be able to, enjoy some of those benefits, I had to get out there and work, right? So I came to the high school where we are today, here at Thomas Jefferson. This is where I went to high school for my working papers. And I was raised, my last name was different. I was raised with my mother's last name. My one side of my family is the Mann family, M-A-N-N.
Okay.
I was raised as A.T. Mann. Oh. And so when I went to the office to get my working papers here in Jeff, the secretary said, we have a problem because my paperwork that I brought in was conflicting. My social security card said Andre T. Mann, but my birth certificate read Andre T. Mitchell. And so it was conflicting. And I was like, what do you mean Andre T. Mitchell on my birth certificate? She said, your birth certificate says Andre T. Mitchell. Is your father named Thomas Mitchell? I'm like, yes, that's my dad. Yeah. He was like, well, I guess you have his last name. I'm like, that's not, everybody in my family is a man.
Yeah.
And so when I went home and as a teenager, man, 14, I think you get your working papers. My mom, that was when I first learned that my last name, I was raised really in disguise. And she knew one day I would learn my true last name. I had to relearn my whole signature, the whole shebang. I was okay with the Mitchell last name, because I love my Mitchell side of my family, but it kind of created some havoc in my crib because I was raised, everybody else's last name is Mann. Yeah. So that was an interesting experience, just trying to go out and get a job and happen to now learn about just personal stuff. High school was different as a teenager. I was a nerd, right? I love to learn, bro. I still love to learn to this day. I enjoy reading. I enjoy math. I enjoy learning. So I sat in class, I did my homework, I studied for my tests. I did well on my tests. I got good grades. However, that's not popular. That's not a popular position. The cats that came in that played for the football team, the basketball team, the rappers, the cats that was the tough guys, the fighters, the thugs, they sat in the back, and I was the subject of their jokes oftentimes. Yeah. Because I didn't have all of the flashy, newer stuff. The girls and everybody who I went to high school with, they would laugh at me when they would crack jokes. This is the same girls that I just helped with the tests. I help you with your homework. But like, what are you laughing at me about? So they was like, I know, Andre, but they like the guys in the back. Yeah. They didn't like the guys in the front, the smart guys. So I started studying. I wanted to be accepted, man, as a teenager with everybody else in class. So I started studying their whole interaction. I started studying their swag. I said, oh, okay. So I tried to sports. So I said, okay, what team I'm going to join? I chose tennis. And so I became a member of the tennis team as a teenager here at Jeff. Yeah. But when I told my peers that I was a tennis player, they said, tennis?
What's that?
What are you talking about? So that didn't cut it. I'm like, oh God, not tennis. So then I just, I studied it a little bit more. One of the things that was coming out that was popular was the 5% Nation. It was like, a whole kind of like thing based on the lessons that you had to study. I said, okay, so that it was all based on how much you can recite the lessons that they gave you. And if you can come back and recite it, you could be accepted into that group. And so that was right down my alley because I love to learn. Yeah. So I was eating that stuff up. Like, I studied, man, overnight, and I came back into the circles they called ciphers at that time. And I spit my stuff. And they was like, ooh, everybody was like, oh, yo, this is the young God. And all the girls began to like me. And I became accepted into, with my peers in high school. Yeah. That's when I began to change. Again, other things are being thrown at me. I had a girlfriend and I had, sex, experiencing sex for the first time. I ain't scared to say it. I have sex until high school, bro. But I didn't have sex ed. I didn't have Planned Parenthood. So one of my girlfriends in high school told me she was pregnant. And so I knew she was serious because she went to my house the same day. She told me her mother was in my house, and my mom called me upstairs, and I walk in and they're in my mom's living room and say, "Do you know this young lady?" I'm like, "Yeah, well, she's pregnant." Her mother said, "And we don't do abortions, so you're going to be a dad." And I'm saying, "A what?" I'm like, my dad was like MIA. My mom was my dad. That's why I seen represented both roles.
Yes.
So I was faced with teen parenthood. So now I'm like that little boy that was looking out the window, staring in the sky. I definitely want better for whatever comes forward than what I was raised and what I experienced. So it heightened my adrenaline to want to really like. So I tried to go to work. I tried to do all of those things, knowing that I was going to be a teen father. Eventually, I had to drop out of high school. Because one of the things that I did, again, because I pay attention to what's going on, I seen the local drug pushers, the weed sellers, these guys were getting money. And so I needed money because the day job wasn't cutting it. Staying in school during those hours, it was critical for me. I couldn't afford those hours. And so I just went to work, started, and I changed, man. I changed from who my moms wanted me to be to what the neighborhood community, the elements of the community became. And so doing that lifestyle, you get in trouble and things happen. I remember when I got approached when I was arrested, and they told me that in the precinct nearby that I was, being questioned about a homicide. I said, "Excuse me, a homicide?" I said, "Yeah." So, well, somebody died. I said, "Well, I ain't killed nobody, so I'm good." And they're trying to ask me, do I know who this person is? And I'm like, I don't know nobody. I don't know nothing, right? All I do know is it wasn't me. And so I learned later now that I didn't know it then. Corrupt police, was serious. That was a big thing back in the 80s. A lot of these police stations and officers on the beat at that time here in the 7-5 in East New York, very dirty cops. They were pinning crimes on people just to close cases and just to move and advance their careers. And I was one of those guys that got caught up in that. So when my mom seen me be arrested for a crime I didn't commit, it devastated my mother. You can imagine one of her only sons, I was the only son of my mother's children that found himself being charged with a serious crime like homicide, or didn't shuttle off to jail for the first time in my life. I wasn't, like I said, I was not smoking weed, doing little dumb stuff, but I was never in jail before. I never had ever experienced that. So it was a culture shock for me. And it was again in there when I was faced with this most serious crime, my determination was, I got to prove my innocence. Like I had too much confidence in the system. Because all I remember was what I seen on TV. If you're innocent, eventually it's gonna be proven that you're innocent. I had too much confidence in the system, and I had to learn the hard way that if you're a young black boy growing up in poverty, in communities that are poverty stricken, you don't have money, you can't afford an attorney, you have no knowledge of the law, you can't really you don't stand a chance in front of the system. And that's what happened to me. I went all the way to trial, literally with confidence that eventually I'm gonna be exonerated, I'm gonna be, innocent, I'm gonna be able to walk away from this traumatic experience, and to discover that the jury of so-called peers, they found me not guilty of homicide. I thought I could walk out the courtroom. They said, "No, Andre, there's still more charges." They found me guilty of manslaughter. And I said, "What? How is that? I don't understand." And I'm like, "What does that mean?" They're like, "Oh, that means you're gonna go to prison." And so, and my mom's was like, she was devastated. My young children, my daughter, who was then, now I knew I was a teen father, her mother was devastated.